We were four artists who wanted to have more control over the kind of comics that we were making. So we created a business structure to protect our artistic intent. A lot of things have been laid on top of Milestone, that it was comics for black people, that it was an attempt by the man to hold down the burgeoning black comic movement, which doesn't seem to have really gone anywhere since Milestone left. If we were holding them down, we did a really good job because we're now holding them down without existing. But basically, it was a bunch of guys who liked comics, who had had a certain level of success in the mainstream, and wanted to take some of that and kind of make our own projects. I mean, we still enjoyed working on mainstream Marvel and DC comics, but we wanted to make our own thing and control it and have total say over it. What I will say is what Milestone got out of the deal was distribution pretty much unmatched by any other black company ever. We did somewhere between 250 and 300 comics, which is probably equal to the output of every other black publisher combined. We sold a lot more comics than anybody else. You know, just from the weight of being in the stores every week. We maintained total creative control. The deal that we had with DC, and DC completely stood by it, was they had the option to not publish. They didn't have the option to change anything. You know, we published a lot of stuff that made them very uncomfortable, which always sort of amused me because they weren't as uncomfortable when they dealt with those topics. But they were dealing with those topics from their point of view and from a perspective that they were comfortable with. We were dealing with it from several different perspectives that they had never heard before, and it made them nervous, and they didn't want to be the guys publishing the book that was wrong somehow, and they didn't understand it, so they were extra jumpy. But they, you know, they lived up to it.
Milestone was a great inevitable next step, that you would have enough successful writers and artists in the comic book business that they could put together a collective and publish their own line of characters. And they were a super talented group. Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cowan are fantastic storytellers. And the characters they've created will have great longevity. I know they're not being published now, but that doesn't matter. Those characters are great, and those characters are for all time. And when you look at the success of Static Shock, when it got turned into an animated series, that animated series was gigantically successful. And it was successful without having a toy line or any licensing support. It got, you know, it wasn't a Disney property, it wasn't a Nickelodeon property, yet it had this huge audience. So I look at that as like, wow, that's enormously successful, and that will be successful again in some other medium. I look at Icon, it's a brilliant character. There were so many brilliant characters that were created in that era that those characters have to come back. They have to be revisited and moved forward, and eventually they will.
I think they were always a lot more sophisticated than their critics gave them credit for. And sophisticated in two ways. First of all, they showed a much greater diversity of characters. I know one of the big criticisms of Icon was that he was a black conservative. And certainly if you look at it in terms of party identification or voting, yeah, that is going to be a minority within a minority, and not really representative of most African Americans at all. But that isn't to say that there isn't a deeper conservative strain within African American culture. You know.
Then I thought they were doing something unique with the Icon figure in that they were making him have conservative instincts, and they were constantly then challenging that notion of conservatism.
So the fact that, first of all, the Milestone creators recognize there's a lot of ideological diversity within the black community, and they actually write that into their comics. I think that shows a lot of sophistication. But then on top of that, part of the interchange between Icon and Rocket is Icon is always so aware of this extra burden that is placed on him, that people will look at him not just as a superhero, but as a black superhero, and that the way he acts really, fairly or not, it's people are going to use that to reflect on the way blacks in general are perceived. So it seems to me that Milestone was always pretty savvy about these issues and was very good about writing them into the series and making them part of the dynamic of those series.